warming, as we are seeing, is attributed to human influence. And also within the UNFCCC processes, I think the Paris Agreement is seeking to achieve a reduction of global warming to a level that is well below 2 degrees Celsius, and then pursuing efforts that will be able to get us at 1.5. But the likelihood of getting or achieving 1.5 degrees is very low. Just a second. It's very low because of the level of emissions that are ongoing from different parts of the world. And so when you project the African region, in terms of the risk that climate change present to the African region within the global context, Africa stands to be at higher risk within all scenarios, even with the low emission scenarios, with 1.5 degrees, we're still expecting that the continent will still be facing the brunt of climate change. And so just opposing that with the socioeconomic status of the African region, it makes it even more complicated and complex, because we have a lot of risks that affect our settlements, risks that affect our water systems, risks that affect our livelihoods, and so on and so forth. So the African region, country by country, appears to be almost the same in all contexts. Now, our topic is to look at Ghana. And so I want to deep dive into the context of Ghana with data, recent data, so that we can be able to digest and then discuss what the situation is and what is it projected to look like and what can be done to be able to reduce or avoid some of the risks that are presented. In doing so, you need to be very proactive in all circumstances. In recent assessment that the country has done within the context of climate risk, projections, and then also scenarios. In terms of temperature, currently the mean annual temperature has increased by 1 degree Celsius since 1960. And this is something that is observed and it is known to almost every person who follows climate change discourse in the country. When it comes to the rate of increase, the assessments also indicate that the increase has been more rapid in the northern part of Ghana. And in terms of the number of days that are hot, we have also seen an increase by 13% in hot days in all seasons. So if you take the rainy season, if you take the dry season, there has been drastic increase, because 13% increase is very significant when you talk of hot days. If you want to also understand the other side of the hot days, is the night temperature. And in terms of night temperature, we are seeing hot nights also increase by 20%, also in all seasons. And so it is not strange to sleep in the night and you have, even though you have your cooling systems on, it can be a condition of fan, but still you'll be sweating because the night temperatures are increasing. When it comes to cold days, which is the opposite of hot days and cold nights, we have seen 3.3% in terms of cold days, and then also 5% in terms of cold nights decreased. So whilst this one is increasing, this is decreasing, and it's apparently so because that's how it's supposed to be. In terms of rainfall patterns, it is variable. So some regions of the country are seeing some increase in temperature, in rainfall, whilst others are also seeing declining. So in terms of total rainfall patterns, it doesn't look correct or good. And so it's very variable. One of the things that you can also look at is natural hazards. and then extreme events. So in the past 50 years, about 22 major hydrometeorological events have also taken place in the country. So looking at flood situations, serious windbreaks, and so on and so forth. These things are happening in a rapid manner in the country. And then in terms of the 24-hour maximum rainfall events, it is also appearing to also increase. So these are things that are posing risk to the country. When you place it within the ecological zones, the 6 ecological zones, and then also even with the climate zones. For the climate zones, there are 4 zones, according to the assessment that we did. Even just opposing that to the ecological zones, it is almost the same picture. So what I talked about is what you are seeing on the screen. So from 1960 to 2000 as observed data, and then projected into 2080, you can see that all the zones, the 4 zones, the northern zone, the coastal zone, the southwest, and then the central are all witnessing by 2080, at least for the northern part, we can actually see increase in temperature by 4 degrees Celsius. Whereas in the southern part, it's talking about 3 degrees Celsius. And then when you take the central part, it's not different from the southern sector. So as also the coast. So I think between the northern and the southern part, there could be 1 degree increase in temperature in the northern sector. When you also look at rainfall patterns, as I mentioned, if you look at all the 4 zones that are projected temperature, for rainfall patterns, it is variable. So you don't see any significant trend in the rainfall patterns. What it means is that it will be difficult for you to be able to predict in terms of how much and in terms of when it's supposed to also come. So when I take the summary of the future climate scenarios, overall, we are looking at higher annual average temperatures in all zones as I just presented. And we're also looking at, in terms of wetness or rainfall, we are looking at weak predictions in that case. And if you take almost all the things that I mentioned, this is how it's going to look like. What risk are they presenting in that context? So you take 2 main events, flood events, and then also epidemic, for instance. From 1980 to 2020, the green bars gives you an indication of the frequency of flood events and the intensity of those floods. And from 2000 up to today, you can see that the intensity or the rate at which rainfall leading to floods are happening across the country is very high. It used not to be the case in the 80s. So once a while you can have 1 flood event. But recently, almost every year, there seems to be a flood event. And they are accompanied with epidemic situations all the same. Whilst we are talking about flood events, there are also 2 extremes. So at one point, you have too much of it. So if you look at the upper image that you are seeing, Tamale had been flooded all over in the city. The same Tamale, when you go down the picture with the gallons, also the same Tamale is queuing for water. So this is the tale of 2 issues that are talking about the 2 extremes, even within the same ecological zone. We can also look at rainfall patterns, as I have already indicated, and it's almost the same for Tamale and then secondary Takoradi. So one projecting the dryland condition, and then one also projecting the coastal conditions. And the situations in terms of reduction of amount of rainfall is looking the same in the 2 ecological zones. Sea level rise is also one of the risks that climate change is presenting. And if you take the western coast to the east, so the entire coastal stretch of the country are eaten up as a result of sea level rise. And this is also combined with some coastal storms, which is leading to increased coastal erosion and then also coastal flooding. And so if you take from Aplau to Elubo in the western part of the country, almost everywhere it's seeing some kind of what sea level rise. And then they are affecting properties along the coast. So almost all the investments along the coast are being affected, including road infrastructure in that direction. We have also downscaled information to the subnational level, apart from doing coastal and then also doing dry land situations. We have 10 districts, or what we call in Ghana as MMDAs, so municipal, metropolitan, and district assemblies, downscaled information and data just to also depict how the information at the national level is manifested at the subnational level. And these MMDAs are selected based on the ecological zone. So from the coastal to the northern part, if you see the trend of the rainfall patterns, it's not different from the national picture that I showed you earlier on. And if you take temperature, it's also mimicking the same. So Awin, Wenchi, West Mampusi, Sekandi Takrade, Sujaman, Tamale, Kumasi, Keta, Tema, Lembele, some are coastal communities, some are inland communities, and they are almost showing the same signals as was shown by the national data. In terms of what the people are, so you in climate change risk and analysis or assessment, you take historical data and information that had been collected by institutions over the past years, and then do your own projections. But it's also equally important to also engage with stakeholders to ask them from what they are seeing, what are the obvious risks that can be presented or are presented from their own perspectives. And we have done very intensive stakeholder analysis across the country with different stakeholders. And I have the opportunity to present to you two cases. So Tamale and then Sekandi. And these are carefully chosen because Tamale represents the northern part of ecosystem of the country, so the dryland conditions, and Sekandi also representing the coastal ecosystems. And so for Tamale, engaging with stakeholders through discussions, these are the issues that they presented as from their perspective are the main risk. So they are talking about damage to water infrastructure through flooding. They are also talking about water supply systems and infrastructure also being affected. Tamale is also talking about access to water resources in terms of drought. Recently, last year, for instance, almost all the northern part experienced high dry spells, which culminated into some amount of drought, affecting a lot of farming activities within that part of. And so this was done even before that. So the assessment of the stakeholders actually fall in line with what is actually happening on the ground. In terms of the urban issues, there are a number of urban flooding and storms almost everywhere. And then also in terms of agriculture, because of droughts, crop productivity is also affected. The health systems, they are also talking about, in terms of health, since this is a health seminar or webinar, heat is one of the key variables that one can talk of. And then also water, because excess water also has its own implications. And so these are issues that can play very well within the health system. Secondly, Takrade, they actually even categorize the risk into levels. So about 5 levels of risk that were categorized by the stakeholders. First is about the impact of what we are seeing on fisheries. They can see that there's potential decline in fish population and then also increasing cost. So the amount of fish that has been harvested over the years has been reducing. And this has implications of the cost of fish or fish products. In terms of risk, the second risk, they are talking about economic and social disruptions due to critical infrastructure. So emergency services are affected, markets, businesses are all affected because of floods and then other climate-related hazards. Later, I can be able to link you with some kind of the implications that this present. Community health is also one of the issues that they have prioritized as a risk, and that is a risk number 3. So they are talking about increase in spread of what? Diseases and then loss of life as a result of climate-related events. And then the 4th one has to do with declining coastal ecosystems, loss of livelihoods, and then also water security. So this is what had been presented as I have. So what are the impacts in terms of the chain analysis of these issues that we are talking about? For instance, if you take the Tamale Metropolitan Assembly, we take flooding, for instance, as a critical risk. Flooding has critical implications on infrastructure. It has implications on crop. It has implications on buildings. It has implications on settlement. So we can actually take one example and then do an impact chain analysis and see the implications. So high temperatures, for instance, can lead to evaporation, or is leading to evaporation, and this has implications. So that can also lead to drought conditions, or less water can also lead to drought. More water can lead to floods, and then also increase in frequency of what? Extreme weather events such as storms can also lead to erosions. These things can affect water quality, can affect water quantity in terms of sediments, and so on and so forth. So for instance, if you take one risk, you can do that kind of chain analysis, and you can actually see the implications. In terms of exposure, Tamale is located in a region that is prone to flooding. And in terms of communities, all the communities along the river banks can be affected, are being affected. The danger with the Tamale and then the northern part situation is that the rainfall patterns or the rainy season within the northern part coincides with the opening of the Bagre Dam from Burkina Faso. So within a short time, they see quite volumes of water that has implications. So in terms of fluvial flooding and then also pluvial flooding, both of them are issues that we can talk about. In terms of vulnerability, for instance, land degradation within the catchment areas are common. They also see lack of sufficient capacity at different levels in terms of governance, in terms of coordination, and so on and so forth. And then majority of the population also depend on agriculture in this case. And so absence of water or too much of it will have implications on that. So when you take one particular risk, you can actually do this kind of chain analysis. Let me do same for Sekondi Takoradi, which is a coastal community, for us to look at it with a deeper eye. So for Sekondi, you are looking at impact on economic and social disruptions due to critical infrastructure failure. And you play in all the issues. So sea level rise is an issue here, bringing in increased tides, which leads to coastal flooding, which can also lead to landslides, and also damage to buildings and so on and so forth. So when you take one risk, temperatures, heat wave, coastal erosion, salt water intrusion, tidal inundations, and so on and so forth, and its implications on the beach. And so that is also something that we can talk about. So in terms of exposure for the coastal community, infrastructure are exposed to high climate hazards. In terms of farmers, you have small-scale farmers that can be affected, the same as the northern part that also I did. Vulnerabilities are around capacity, like I did for the northern, but also when it comes to the coastal community, illegal sand mining is one of the issues that also play into this vulnerability, apart from the hydrometeorological events there are also non-climate stresses that are also affecting the vulnerabilities of the people. So you can actually also put the two together and then look at which domains these risks are affecting. So which sectors, for example, looking at agriculture, water, health, disaster, energy, transport, and so on and so forth. So almost all these sectors, if you do impact chain analysis, as you are seeing on the screen, the other far end are the hazards and then how they play out within the risk and impact. And at the end of the day, the domains that they are affected, the domains are which sectors that these issues are affecting. So summarizing them here, in terms of the sectors, these are the key sectors that we can talk of. So agriculture, water, coastal related areas, health, energy, and cities. And these are some of the images that are very common from the words that I have talked about. This is how they play out, bordering in terms of risk on the ground. Water quantity, this where the man is standing is supposed to be a dam that is supposed to support smallholder agriculture activities and then also support livestock because cattle take their water feed from this dam. The water had vanished entirely. And so it has implications which can affect livestock and then also can affect crop production and even household water in that direction. So in terms of the risk and adaptation for the assessment, the primary agriculture sector such as agriculture and fisheries are most sensitive to the impact of climate change. And all sectors will be affected. And so it's not only the agri sector that is going to be affected, almost all sectors, but because the economy is climate agriculture dependent economy, if there is key risks that are affecting the agriculture sector, then more people are going to be vulnerable in that respect. And so there are some adaptation options that or responses that can be proposed in doing so by scaling up agriculture, climate smart agriculture activities, and so on and so forth. So there's risk in the agri sector. There's also risk in terms of water insecurity. Here, insecurity of water will increase due to high temperatures and then also low precipitation. So local water sources, both surface and groundwater, are the most vulnerable in that regard. And so the aquifers may not be able to recharge the way they're supposed to be because of the sources being depleted. There's also extreme events, including both hot days and then also more intense rainfall, as I started in the earlier slide. There is an implication also, on health. In terms of health, we are talking about warmer temperatures that are going to affect both health facilities and then also the delivery of health within the country. And we need to also be aware of that. So the impacts will be acutely felt in the health sector with temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius. And for the health sector, not only the services that are provided, but also the infrastructure that we have a lot of chip compounds that are sited not properly in this country, for instance. And so if climate risks are not put into account when these issues are being cited, the facilities can be affected on a more serious note. And so it is something that we have to also look at. In terms of energy, the same. So almost all the key sectors that we have in the economy can be affected in that direction. We are also trying to summarize the whole systems. So all the key things that I spoke about, what are the key messages that we want to talk about? The first key message is that Ghana stands at a very decisive moment in its climate journey. In general, there is a strong confidence in the projection of increased air temperatures across all future climate scenarios, and then also throughout the country over the 4 identified climate zones, particularly under a future high emission scenario. So if we are going to go to 8.5 emission scenario section, then it means temperatures are even going to be more higher. And then even with that 4.5 scenario, you still have temperatures also rising, both in the northern part and then also in the southern part. But the northern part will be the most affected. By the end of the century, it is anticipated that temperatures will increase between 0.5 and 4.5 degrees Celsius, depending on the global state of greenhouse gas emissions, because you cannot talk about temperature increases in a vacuum. It is the emissions of greenhouse gases that actually spell out how much warm we are going to experience. So if we are going to increase emissions across countries in the globe, then obviously, because there's no space division in the global space, Ghana also stands to be affected. For future climate projections, however, suggest only weak changes in average annual rainfall. So whilst temperatures are expected to increase, as I said, in terms of the projection, there is low expectation because the anticipation is very weak in that case. So overall, there is a greater probability of wetting for Ghana, but it is interspersed with high temperatures, and therefore evaporation will be high. And so the little rain that we get, the heat cannot compensate for those ones, and that can be a loose situation. So historical data points to an increasing frequency and magnitude of extreme events, particularly flooding. The trend of increasing number of very hot days and maximum daily rainfall, which leads to increased flood, is expected to persist and intensify into the future, especially under the higher global emission scenario. This may also be seasonal shift also in the rainfall for Ghana. So increasing sea level is also another one that we want to give you as a summary message. But we are saying that it is crucial to understand that Ghana's vulnerability to these climate changes is also as a result of socioeconomic dynamics. So it's not only always the case that it is climate, but there are some other also socioeconomic dynamics that also play in, including rapid population growth and environmental degradation. So if you look at what is happening as a result of illegal mining, for instance, has dire consequences on availability of water and then also land-related issues. And so it's not always the climate that is a problem, but there are also socioeconomic issues that we are doing as a country that will actually exacerbate the problems as we see now. So the future, however, is not entirely bleak. If we're able to adopt certain measures, for instance, by embracing sustainable development practices like championing climate smart agriculture, if we're able to enhance integrated water resources management by including upstream countries in the water basin, for instance, or if you are able to prevent environmental degradation that are associated with illegal mining and other land tailing systems, we can be able to manage. We can also do more in terms of the coastal conditions by enhancing or strengthening coastal defenses, by supporting quite a number of livelihoods also across the country. So early warning systems is something that we cannot avoid for the agricultural sector, for the health sector, including surveillances and so on and so forth. And so it is not always a bleak picture. The country will be able to understand the risks that are presented as a result of climate change and adopt the appropriate measures. I think we'll be able to achieve some sustainable development in the country. So thank you so much for giving me your time to go through this presentation with you. Over to you, Prof. Hello, Prof.
It seems, let me see, we lost him along the line. Let me see if he's in the. Well, I'll take over then.
So yeah, so if you can step in, yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. We are grateful for sharing these insightful findings. I mean, having in mind that you are currently in Germany for some climate negotiations discussion, and you still made time to share with us some of this interesting data and output from your activities. So at this point, to open it up, if you raise your hand, we'll allow for you to ask your questions. And if you are able to also put some in the chat, we can also bring it up for discussion. So I see that, Stephanie, you have your hand up. So go ahead and ask your question. Okay, Cedric, please.
Thank you very much. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Thank you very much. My name is Cedric Jelu, and I work with the Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability. Doc, thank you so much for this insightful presentation. I'd like to find out from you that what is the collaborative opportunities that government agencies and CSOs can work with you to popularize these findings and to integrate these findings into policy, dimensions of the government and CSOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cedric, for your question. Please, Dr. Amoah, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Cedric, for that important question. So I think all this work that we did is for the purposes of the question you just asked. As a country, we have not been able to speak with evidence because we rely largely on data from elsewhere. And so the essence of doing this is part of the national adaptation planning, is to produce this data and then share with the relevant institutions so that they can be aware of what it is and then what they can use that one for. So we have started this process. We've started engaging with all stakeholders. In fact, before I came to Bonn, we had about 5 different meetings back to back. We met with all the key sectors of the economy, representatives of the sectors, plus some civil society organizations and private sector to present the National Adaptation Planning Framework, which this studies is associated with. We took the opportunity to also meet with Parliament to also present this information and data with. We have also taken the opportunity to meet with chief directors and then also heads of institutions from the government sector to also share. We are also doing same at a subnational level with almost all the MMDAs. In fact, the meetings we had in Accra, some MMDAs were invited, but next 2 weeks, we'll be in Kumasi also for some back-to-back discussions with the MMDAs to be able to also help them to be able to take this data. Above all, we are putting up a climate information vulnerability portal where some of this information will be put there. It will be available to everybody who wants to access and utilize. And we have started orienting stakeholders on the portal. We've had engagement with stakeholders on the portal. There's going to be training on the portal subsequently so that they can be able to use the information and the data that this NAP process actually presents. So there are some efforts, but I think we can actually continue to talk. Your office is one of the new offices that have been mandated to coordinate climate change activities in the country. And so if that platform can also be given to us to utilize, I think that will also reach a number of audiences, both at national and then also at the international level. So that's what I can say in response to that question. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Amoah, and thanks, Cedric, for the question. And hopefully, in the near future, your office can work with EPA to make this visible. Kofi.
But so let me also say that one of the opportunities is also this platform that we are using, because the essence of this webinar was to share information and data to a wider readers and then stakeholders. So we are also grateful to the Kintampo Health Research Center for giving us this opportunity. Over.
Thank you. Kofi, over to you.
Yeah, hello, good evening to all of you. I hope you can hear me.
Very well.
Okay, and thank you for your presentation. That's a very wonderful presentation. And my question is, I want to find out from you, how are you integrating this whole information as far as communication and education is concerned? Being the fact that climate issues are happening at the local level, how are we making sure that the people at the local level are able to understand these issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Kofi. Dr. Amoah, please. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I think that is also another important question. Mostly we do almost all the work at the national level, and the people who are actually at the brunt of climate change are deprived of this kind of information for decision making. And so apart from using the assemblies that most of the time it's challenging to get down to the people, I think we need to be able to identify channels. And so CCLG, for example, that Kofi, I know, is the chair. Kofi, you are ambassador of this NAP process. And so I think, and you preside over a very important institution, which actually reach out to the local people. Maybe we may have to have a discussion on how best you can also help not you as Kofi, but the CCLG can also support this process in terms of downscaling this information to the ordinary people. And then all other media platforms that we can use. In fact, we have what we call climate change ambassadors, strategically formed with people coming from different stakeholder institutions. One of the key partners that strategically we selected was the media. So the General Secretary for Ghana Media, Ghana Journalists Association, for instance, is an ambassador. From our understanding, we brought the media ambassador in to also facilitate some of these local communications so that we can use almost all the media outlets to be able to disseminate information to the people that matter. It hasn't worked the way it's supposed to be, but it means we need to actually do more in that direction also. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stephanie, please.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Nana, for the presentation. That's a very great one. And my question is, I see that now we have a lot of bodies working on climate change, coming up with policies and all of them. I want to know, is there a platform that we are trying to make sure that all these findings that we are getting from research, from the ministries and all the other partners, we'll have to collate them all together, that we don't duplicate the efforts that we are putting in place, so that all the findings that we are getting, we have a place that we can harmonize them all together and then bring out a one-time policy that it will help us as a country. Do we have that in place? Thank you.
Nana,
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think,
sorry.
yeah.
Before you answer, maybe I'll just read similar questions also so that you can box all of them into one response. So we have Williams who had left ask if there are other mitigation plan to help the northern region, because the inhabitants are largely agriculture dependent. And then also if there are extreme weather, will the extreme weather or climate condition impact food systems in Ghana? And then we want to know how you are leveraging the platform in West Africa, and if there are partners, and how are you networking with them for us to have a collective West African plan? Thank you.
Okay, so that's a lot. So let me start with the lady who just spoke, and then I'll tie in. In fact, the question that she asked she made my day, because there seem to be a lot of things happening in different quarters in the country. Sometimes when we say there's no information, it is not entirely true. If you take the research landscape, there's so much that has been done. If you go to the government agencies and ministries and departments, people or sectors are doing different things altogether. The challenge has to be access to this information. And so her question is appropriately right. What we are trying to do with the NAP process is, I just mentioned it in my presentation, that we are setting up what we call Climate Vulnerability and Information Portal. It is far advanced. We have presented the draft portal to a number of stakeholders about 2 weeks ago. They have inputted into it. The essence of that platform is to bring all these things that you're talking about together, so that if I'm in Navrongo and I need data about rainfall patterns, about temperature patterns, about flood conditions, I can be able to go to that portal and then access information and data. So it is a centralized data that is actually incorporating subnational information to that. We are starting piloting only 3 districts that has, they have the infrastructure now. So we have Tamale, we have Bekwai, and then we have Sekendi Takrady, that we have developed that system. And their district information is going to be uploaded into the national platform. So the national platform is for all the sectors. So agri, energy, transport, whatever. Those will be the sectors, health. Then the districts or the subnational structures will also plug in their information into that. If we're able to do that, I think we'll be able to reduce the deficiency of information that we all talk about. Are there any mitigation measures that we are doing to reduce the vulnerabilities in the northern sector because they are agri-related? We have a meeting here. No problem. I can step out. I'm almost done here. So in that regard, it is yes, because we are developing quite a number of proposals so that these proposals will help bring resources. As I speak to you, next week, if everything moves right, a proposal of about $73 million grant will be approved for adaptation for the northern sector through the GCF. So we are writing quite a number of proposals from different angles and then to push. We're also trying to capacitate the institutions by themselves to be able to also take up some of these issues. And so that is what I can say for now in that regard. In terms of West Africa collaboration, it is important to be talking to each other because the problems of Burkina Faso upstream is the problems of the northern part of Ghana. And so that basin has to be talking. And that is at a political level that I'm sure discussions are also ongoing in that respect. Over.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take one last question and then we'll bring it to an end. I see Mr. Yakubu Al-Hassan.
Thank you, Selu. Thank you, Doc, for that wonderful, presentation. I have a quick question. I want to find out regarding the agencies and governmental institutions that you want to bring on board, do you think of an agency such as the DVLA in terms of their regulations on how, licensing is given to vehicles that are, old age vehicles, which are no longer roadworthy, but are found on our roads and emitting a lot of these greenhouse gases you mentioned of? I don't know whether you have thought of, bringing such an agency into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you are right. So in climate change discourse that we have in the country, we have the mitigation that has to do with reduction of emissions or removals or avoidance, and then we have the adaptation. So what I presented today was within the context of adaptation, but because I am from the climate change department, I know what is happening also within the mitigation landscape. So yes, you're right. We are working closely with the DVLA and other institutions to develop. We already have an act of parliament that talks about standards. So we have developed standards. We are now working on regulations that will help us to be able to regulate these vehicles that you are talking about. You know, in our situation, these issues are bread and butter. And so if you don't regulate them very well, and you just jump onto the street and start packing of rickety vehicles, I think it has socioeconomic implications. So we are working with the DVLA, the Ghana Standards Authority, the Ghana Police, and then other security agencies to be able to see how best we can roll out the standards that have been developed so that once it's been implemented, people can be aware. We need to also start by educating people about the rollout of these standards so that we don't take the people by surprise. So yes, we have thought of it and we have worked in that direction that it will be rolled out very soon. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Amoah. And lastly, there was a question in the chat about the availability of data, and then also if there are plans for early warning systems. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm now coordinating something that, if it works well, by the end of next year, we'll have a stronger early warning structure that is looking at both technical issues and then also financial mechanisms to address early warning once and for all. Because we've been trying to do things bit and pieces, which are not comprehensive and long-lasting. And so I don't want to lay out almost everything, but in terms of assurances, we are working on a stronger settings for an early warning. In terms of access to the data, we are working on the data repository that I talked about, but in the meantime, we can be using email systems and then also telephones and any other medium that anybody wants data that I have presented. They can reach out to us. My email address is on the screen that I can reach out to. And some also the NAP website email address is also here, that people can also send emails. Once we get them, we'll be able to share this information and data in the meantime. But the long-lasting one is to have that repository or the portal that can be uploaded. Yeah.
On that note, I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Amoah, for being available to present this, despite the fact that you are very well engaged in Bonn for the climate negotiations discussions, which is currently ongoing. And we'd like to also thank the attendees and for their patience regarding the earlier challenge of the technical hitch. And also to let you know that this webinar is sponsored by the CLARE program, which is being run by the Kintampo Health Research Center to understand the impact of climate change on various health outcomes. So stay tuned and look out for our next session. Thank you so much for your time. On that note, I bring this session to an end.
Thank you so much also, Solo, for the opportunity to present. Thank you all for being part of it. Thank you.